Are you ready to be unmessable with? Well, you are in the right place. Welcome to Be Unmessable With, the podcast where you get the inspiration, strategy, and coaching to be unmessable with, no matter what life throws at you. And now, your host, Jocelyn Herman-Saccio.
Welcome to the Be Unmessable With podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn Herman-Saccio, and today my guest is an amazing actress named Kelli Giddish, and she's known mostly for playing Detective Amanda Rollins on the longest running show in the universe, Law and Order Special Victims Unit. But she also starred in the not so long running Chase on NBC, as well as Past Lives on Fox. So she's no, newbie to the business. Law and Order was after a significant career. So one of the things we're going to talk about is what is that like to be an actor and go through job after job after job and the potential of rejection, because that is something that messes with people for sure. She's from Georgia, but she lives in New York City now, and she's raising her beautiful family of 3 boys with her amazing husband. And I'm so appreciative that you said yes to being on the Be Unmessable With podcast. So welcome, Kelli.
Thank you very, very much. I'm excited to be here speaking with you today.
Me too. Me too. Now, that was a brief intro on really a significant career. As you know, I work with actors as well as coaching people, and most people never reach 1 series regular, never mind 3, right?
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up doing this.
Well, and you know what? It's funny. I listened to the Joe Rogan podcast, and I just heard Neil Brennan, who is a director, worked with Dave Chappelle and does his own stand up now, and he like makes these checklists of gratitude every day. And I was like, you know what? At this point right now, like I tend to do that throughout the day. Like I don't write it down, but I am so appreciative of where I am now, of the family I have, of the
Yeah.
career I have, of the friends, of, the parents. And, I don't take any of it for granted. And I never did. I started acting when I was little. And I think my first audition was Do Your Ears Hang Low? And I did like the whole motion.
Wobble to and fro.
Yeah.
Yes. As a parent, we've all sung that.
Anytime in a boat, can you throw them over your shoulder like a continental? So
Do your ears hang low?
That's right. That's right. So, I remember doing that, and there was an amazing person in my community named Yatesy Harvey, who took kids from all across the county in Forsyth County, Georgia, and she put them in these plays, and she expected the best out of us. And I ended up transferring high schools, like not going to the one I was meant to go to, so that I could work with her. Also the one that my mom was the assistant principal at, which was interesting. But so I did that in high school, and it was a very rigorous program. Like it was, we didn't take anything lightly. She didn't take anything lightly. We had to show up, and I was also a softball player. And so I knew about discipline and that kind of thing, but that was a major, major part of my life growing up. And then I went to college. I wanted to study physics, and I was
Really?
I was kind of on my way to Tucson, Arizona, to go to college there for that. And my parents were like, they sat me down and they were like, "Are you sure? Are you sure you don't
You want to be a
theater?"
physicist?
No, like, "Are you sure you don't want to study theater?" And I was like, "You guys are not supposed to be asking me that." You know what I mean? Like that's not how this is supposed to go. So I've had major, major support.
That's great.
My family who are not artists. One's an educator, one worked for IBM, AT&T, like management. And so I went to college, and it was this great, great college in Indiana, University of Evansville, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but just a mecca. It really attracted highly intelligent people that like there was so much discussion. It's like exactly what you want the college experience to be, like hashing out theories and then just working and working and working, 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day, just doing theater and directing. And I had to do every part of it, build the sets and paint the sets and light and costume and makeup. And, you learned all of it, which it was so instrumental to me knowing different parts of the business, and I finished up there, and I I went to the O'Neill Playwrights Conference, which was run then by the fantastic, rest in peace, Jim Houghton, who started the Signature Theater in New York. And I'd also done some writing workshops while I was in college, and got cast in a play like in the Berkshires when I was 20 years old. And I remember calling Jim Houghton because we kind of had a connection through my school. And I said, do I do this? Do I get my equity card? Like, should I not? Because when I moved to New York, I don't want to be like, I want to do non-union stuff, but I want to be able to do union stuff. And he was like, Kelly, none of that matters. He was like, what you need when you move to New York is to find your crew. You need a support group. You need people that will hold you up when you're not feeling the best, people that will inspire you, people that you can bounce ideas off of. And that's exactly what I found in Evansville. And a bunch of us moved to New York after that. And, I lived on a futon in my friend Winter Miller's Chelsea apartment for $500 a month. I think the whole apartment was maybe 750 square feet. I don't know how we did it. You know what I mean? And then after 6 months, she was like, you have to move out because I need my space back. And I said, oh, okay. Well, where am I going to find an apartment for $500?
$500 a month.
So I was working at a restaurant making $30 to $40 a night. And I knew that I had to move out, and I didn't have a place to go. And I remember just bawling at work. I was waiting tables. There was one table in there. Like, I made no money there. And like, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I've been here for 6 months. I'm in the shit.
Yeah.
And like, I think a customer saw me, like he was a regular and the only table in there. And he was like, what's going on? And I was like, I need a place to live and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to be an actor and I don't know. And he was like, well, my cleaning lady has an apartment and she's looking to rent out her second bedroom. And so I went and lived with this 70-year-old Colombian lady in Chelsea for $500 a month. And then another friend moved, and we eventually got an apartment in the East Village. And I remember going to Georgia one time, while I was living with her. And I came back. I flew back with $5 to my name. I had this big old suitcase, and she had locked me out of this apartment. So I had nowhere to go. I had $5. So of course I went to Mustang Sally's, and I think I bought like a grilled cheese on credit. And I called my parents, and I was like, I don't know what to do here. Like, I'm locked out. I'm not making any money. Like, everything is a struggle. And Dad goes, well, get back on the plane and come home. And I was like, no way. No way. That's not an option. It was just never an option. Like, as badly as I was feeling, is like confused and like just frustrated that there's no playbook. There's no how-to book about how to be an artist in any shape, form, fashion. And and so I just kept on keeping on, and I auditioned. I got an agent, and I ended up getting in a Broadway play, like within my first year of being in New York. And I remember just going, I knew it. I knew I could do it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. And it was with Farrah Fawcett, and it was a straight play. And I got to just be this like sass character. And then it closed right before it opened.
Oh,
I
God.
was like,
But those are the kind of false starts. It's like, and people don't realize this. If you're not in this business, you don't understand how many false starts people have. You think it's like, oh, an
no
overnight
idea.
success, and oh, they got that show. They have no idea about the $5 in your pocket and the no place to live. And I mean, it's so many stories I could tell about clients that, they book this huge show and then it doesn't get picked up, or they book this thing, it's going to change their life forever, and then it never gets released. And that it's unbelievable. And then they start spending money that they don't have, which hopefully you didn't do, but it's, people start believing their own hype.
Yeah. Actually, there was a funny thing. When I was 20 and I got that play in the Berkshires, it was equity, and I had a union job while I was still in college. I felt so cool, and I was making $600 a week. I was like, this is so much money. I can do anything I want. And then I went to the, like after 3 weeks of rehearsal, I went to the ATM and it was like overdrawn. And I was like, oh, oh my God. Oh no, I have no money. You know what I mean? Like, and I called my mom and I was like, she was like, yeah, Kelly, that's not that much money. Like, especially for New York, especially when you spend $20 walking from 20th Street to 19th Street. I'm like, how did
And
I
getting
spend
a cup of
$20?
coffee. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
How did I do it? So I'm glad that I had that little lesson then, um, on a small scale. At that point, like, oh, this isn't, when you're making money, it's not that, first of all, it's just not that much money. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like what
And
level you're on.
it goes quick. And people, like I've had somebody book like a huge voiceover campaign and making six figures on the voice. Oh, should I quit my job? I'm like,
No,
no, you should not quit your job because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't
I'm
know if a show is
still,
going to get canceled.
I'm still that way. I was in Whole Foods yesterday and I saw a now hiring sign and I was like, I can always do that.
You could.
I'm always, I still think tomorrow I'm going to go back to being a waitress, and I don't mind that feeling. You know what I mean? I don't
I
mind it.
think if
And
it's healthy, if you can hold it in a healthy way, it's not about scarcity. It's about to continue to create and not get
right,
sucked into some sort of something's handled
right,
modality.
right.
And I think that's a very smart way to function in any business.
I do too. I do too. And like, and you find a way to make it work. Because you have to go on auditions during the week. So how are you going to hold you can't hold a job during the week if you're having to audition. So it's like, okay, how do I figure that out? So I figured out a restaurant that would let me do like Friday nights, Saturday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. So I would work like a fireman, right? Like how they just do three, not my job was not as hard as a fireman, but
No,
just
but
in terms of
double
like,
shifts. Yeah.
yeah, double shifts. And so I would get all of my money, on the weekend. So I would have the week to write, to audition, to do all that. And you know, I remember when, in my early 20s, after the Broadway show closed, I was like, I need to create my own thing, and I was always in black box theater plays that my friends had written. But I was like, I'm gonna try my hand at writing something, and I did, and we ended up performing it at the Cherry Lane, But
Amazing.
I think that, like, just a tenet that I super believe in is work begets work. It doesn't matter if it's like, that's one thing about Ice-T that I always just so admire. He doesn't feel like the work has to be perfect. Not saying that it's not perfect, but he's in his interests are always just keep it moving.
Yeah.
Keep all the juices flowing. And like what comes out, that's not as important as how it makes you feel to create. And that
Yeah, it's
spirit
brilliant.
carries over into from that, like somebody from a soap opera saw me do that and they go, oh, we think you'd be right for this role. And so I was like, okay. So I go and I test for that and I get the role and sign a 4-year contract with them. And after 2 years, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm playing like
Back in the day when we had soap operas,
right.
that was like everybody's go, oh, if I could just get a soap, if I could, but they didn't realize that it wasn't like the hugest paying thing, and it was
No,
like a really grinding schedule, and it's
yeah.
not, it's
But
not what people.
I learned a crap ton
Oh,
from.
you must have. It's the
We
best
did
trained
90
people.
pages. It is 90 pages a day because we did a script and a half every day. And I mean, 90 pages. We do like 7 on a big day at Law and Order. Um, but
Such good training,
you
though. It's
had to know
like,
lines. You had to, I mean, you got one take at everything. So you weren't messing around. Um, and you like as a 20, I forget how, the 23-year-old, 24-year-old, like I learned what it is to get on 3 trains and show up to work on time and, and be ready and still have, still try and create within such a structured setting. But that I just think work begets work. And like it's, that's always been true for me. And like that, I got off that and ended up like, I mean, just auditioning and being in plays. And And then having champions in the casting world in New York that really tried to push me through. And I remember one of them, she said, come, I'd done the audition, and she said, come into my office. And I said, okay. She sat me down and she goes, you've got to buy some makeup and you've got to present yourself. And I go, okay, heard. You know what I mean? Because I was like, no, I'm just an actor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't have to like do all this stuff. And
I don't buy into that whole thing,
you have to do it.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
do
It's the
it.
game you're in.
Yes. So, and I took that for exactly how she meant it. She was just trying to help, and it did help me. And so, I I incorporated that into my serious work as an actor, like actually put on some makeup and have
You like come camera ready,
a exactly. So, and like there were so many close calls, like I told you before, like I've spoken to you previously about, like I I was I was sure that this role on some CBS show, like it was the lead role, and it was mine. You know what I mean? Like I went to test for it, and it was between me and another girl, and the director was like, "It's all yours," and I was like, "Yes! Oh my god, this is it."
My life is about to change.
And I got the phone call, and I was like, "Yeah," and they were like, it went to the other girl, and I was like, shattered, and I mean, just like I didn't. But it's at that moment where you're just like, okay, so that wasn't it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You let yourself grieve. You let yourself go, whole, no, 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 no. You let yourself go through that process, but you get up the next morning and you go to your auditions.
And if you don't, then you end up not in this business. And that's, I think,
Right,
something really, really powerful that you're saying. And given this is called Be Unmessable With,
right,
how many people go down for the count when they've had situations like that where a big thing doesn't happen, or they think it's going to and then it doesn't, or they reached, audition after audition and they don't get cast, and they go, you know what, maybe this is not what I should be doing. Or they have the $5 in their pocket and they call their parents and they do get on the plane.
right.
So give us something like, that you can remember, a situation where you were dealing with such difficult circumstances. You already did, but anything else that you can say that in that moment, it was like you were either going to go south, but you didn't. And you
Yeah,
ended up transcending the circumstances and emerging what I call unmessable with, which really, I know you don't know too much about the methodology, but it isn't about being tough. It's about being able to stay in action on your vision, no
mm,
matter what's happening, and not go into reaction mode.
right, right. Well, I mean, there was another time where they were doing a female version of Prison Break. And I think that's what it was. And they said, now, I was asking, I was going to be the lead, right? And so you have to make your deal before you go to do the test.
And
And
it's a 7-year deal. For those of you that don't know how those deals work, it's basically you're saying the next 7 years of my life you have.
right. So it's a lot on the line. And when you're first starting out, when you've got no credits, they're like, yeah, here's a number. You're going to
Yeah.
take it. And I was like, I'm not to be a lead of the show. I'm not going to take that number. And they go, okay, well, we're not going to test you. And in that moment, I was in New York. The tests were going to be out in LA, and I called my manager and I said, I'm getting on a flight to LA because they're going to call us back, and they're going to offer me what I want. And I did it, and I got off the plane in LA after the flight when we didn't have Wi-Fi to know what had been going
Yeah.
on. Because you're right, they offered what we asked for. And I was like, the power of no, you know what I mean? And that, even though I didn't get that job, it significantly raised my quote. And a
Totally.
quote is what
Yeah.
you go for those. A quote is what you go to for the next test. And so
So you're
it's
establishing
significant.
like a
Yeah,
new rate that
yeah,
you would get paid. And that, for those of you listening that don't know that lingo, that's a big deal, because anytime you do a job after that, you just jumped, even without booking the role, you now
correct.
just jumped, doubled or tripled whatever you would have gotten.
Right. So I could have easily said yes and taken what they were handing me and said, "Oh, okay, thank you so much." But I knew I'm like, that's ridiculous. This number is ridiculous for what they're asking of this role, for what they would be asking of me. It's a ridiculous amount. And, and so I asked for double, and I got it. You know what I mean? And in that moment, I could have said yes. And I chose instead to say no and bet on myself and get on the flight to LA and just say, okay, I think they're going to come back. And if they don't, then it's okay. I'll go see my friends in LA and I'll go take some meetings. You know what I mean? But to bet on yourself and to be like, I know what I'm worth. I know what they're asking of me, and to stand by it like that I think that took, I'm really proud of that moment with myself. And I think it
Yeah,
took,
that's courage.
yeah,
It takes courage, but it's also like I can hear a few things in what you've said so far. One thing I can hear that has really made a difference for you in your lifetime is community.
yeah,
Whether it was in high school, in college, then finding your crew when you got to New York, that is integral to your, like, what has you win, is
right,
having that kind of supportive community. And I so subscribe to that because, as far as I'm concerned, no matter how talented you are, no matter how driven you are, if you don't have a powerful team around you, you can only accomplish just so much, right?
right.
And so that's one thing I hear. But the other thing I hear is it's not just like having confidence in yourself or courage, it's about having a vision. Like you had a vision for something for yourself, whether it was with that show or something else, but like you could see what it would look like in the end. And then something didn't line up, the number didn't line up with what that vision was. So, from my perspective, that's like integrity. That's
Right.
like having a level of integrity that most people don't really engage with. That level of integrity, they're just happy to get the job. They don't, they're like, whatever, I'll work it out later, I'll negotiate it later if the show's a success, blah blah blah. But
Right.
that level of integrity is very critical to anybody who wants to have a real lasting sustainable career. So say a little bit about that, like your relationship to integrity as
Well, I
well.
really appreciate that. I love that word. And I I mean, I love hearing that that's what you get from that. It Yeah, I mean, in all of the crucial moments where I've made decisions, um, it it's of course it's a gut feeling, but it's like if if I don't do what I know I should do right now, I can't I can't lay my head on the pillow at
Yep.
night. You know what I mean? Which I have no problem doing.
Yeah.
I'm the best sleeper because I just know that if I don't, if it's like if you have the thought to put your seatbelt on and you don't do it, you're an idiot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you crash. Like that's how I always think. I don't need the seatbelt reminder because if I think about it, I do it. You know what I mean? Because it's the right thing. It's such a weird example, but it's the right thing to do in that moment for me and now for my family, which is
Yeah,
a
exactly.
whole different ball game
It is. It's a
now.
different level of integrity because if you think about it at the level of individual, there's certain things that work a certain way. Then when you're in a relationship, at the level of relationship, there are certain things that now no longer work.
Right?
And you have to look from what's going to work for the relationship. But at the level of family, you're at a different level of foundation for a house, right? So you
Yes.
need a bigger foundation of integrity to be able to build a house that's going to last. And, when you look for what's going to work for my family, I mean, I can imagine that you get offered things that are just not consistent with that. Whereas if you were just an individual, yeah, sure, that would have worked for
Right.
4 months to go do that thing. But now it's like, wait a minute, my kids are in school and,
Right.
where do we want to be close to our parent or whatever?
Right. Right. So, I mean, like that's something, you know, that's definitely a bridge I'm crossing, like what like what what are the requirements of the job that I'm okay with, like what tips the scale, and I don't know what that is now. What tips the scale for me to say, yes, this is, this, I can take this, I can pursue this, that particular project or job, or even something like directing. when I have this family right now, the requirements are too much right now. And, you know, like talking it through, with someone like you, I think would all be definitely helpful, to clarify it. And
Yeah.
to, maybe not, you're not going to come out with exactly, because every project's different, like why you're doing it is different. There's money, there's creative um contentment,
Expression
yeah,
or
expression. I mean, there's so many different reasons now why you do a job, but it's, like that is something that I I wonder about in the next few years. I have a 10-month-old, a 5-year-old, and an 8-year-old. You know what I mean? So that's that's something I'm very much keeping tabs on. Like, I don't know what that journey is going to look like, because Law and Order I was on for so many years, and it was so easy to have my family. You know what I mean? It was in New York. I breastfed all my kids. I weighed 180 pounds on a national television show 3 times. You know what I mean? Like they were very supportive of me and
well, it's
very
like a family, but that's again your
community.
community, your
Right.
family. I mean, and for those of you that don't know, which is everybody, my husband works on that show with Kelly. That's how we know each other, and has been on that show for 20 years.
Crazy.
So it is like a family and a community, and it's we've raised our youngest child, but really all our kids
Yeah.
inside of that community as well. So it
Yeah.
is very friendly
Yeah, it is.
to
It is.
family.
And it better be, because we spend so much damn time together on sets. I don't think people realize, like, it's a 14-hour day, you know what I mean? It's at least a 12-hour day, 5 days a week sometimes. So,
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I mean? It's
there's
it's
no secrets.
insane.
It's all right out there, and
And there's
you know
no pricks. There's no pricks
it's
on our set.
you
You know what I
can't
mean?
do it. You can't
No.
have it
No.
because one bad apple, it sours the whole pie. That's not, I don't know if that's a thing, but
I think so, right?
it is now.
Yeah.
It's like your other analogy. I think we can both be in the it's a level of our analogies. But if you look right now, right, given you're kind of completing your initial run on Law and Order, because you're doing other things, looking at what's next, right? If you look at the next 5 years from your vision, not from an extrapolation of the past.
Hmm.
I'm taking a little liberty here to
Go for
work
it.
with you, if
Yeah.
that's okay.
I'd
Okay,
love.
yeah, great. Because this is, like I work with people who are dealing with completing one thing and what's next? Now what?
Yeah.
Which is a big
Right.
question for people. And a lot of times when you've been in something for a while, you're executing it, but you're not really creating
Mm-hmm.
the next chapter. Now you have an opportunity to create the next chapter. And I would look from nothing, like a blank canvas, 5 years from now. What do you want your life to look like?
Hmm.
Not looking like, well, if I stay and I'm recurring here, or if I do this, but everything based on whatever's happening. No, forget about what's happening. Go from nothing.
Right.
What do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to live? What do you want your marriage to look like? What do you want your family life to look like? What's the design? And then backwards engineer it
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
determine those deal breakers. Like you said, I'm not sure what's going to tip the scales. Those are what I would call deal breakers. It's kind of like, there's certain things that, I mean, I'm not going to just do something for money. I'm not going to do it. It's
Right.
not about that for me. I have different
Right.
criteria. So it's like you can create the criteria from the vision. So if you just, and you're not stuck with anything you say here, but if you just kind of
Right.
look from nothing, what would you want 5 years from now?
Well, I mean, I want to be able to provide, like, not worry about helping my kids pursue their interests. I want I want a marriage where my husband feels secure and feels like I've dedicated time to nurture that relationship. Um, and I want to be creating with other people. I want to have my hands dirty in something. I want to be creating something. Like that spark that you get
Yeah.
every single day, like going, oh, and like when you have this plan, like I mean, even on a small scale, like I read a scene and you go and you're like, wait, this is not at all what I expected. You know, the location is completely different. The actor, the guest star is completely not what you envision. And that's thrilling because everything you thought, you have to make a left turn and think on your feet. And that's what I love doing. I'm good at that. So I want to put all the things that I've learned over the years, especially being on a set day in, day out, to use. You know what I mean? And lead a team um, and I don't know if that's directing or if it's producing and making sure that people have the right tools necessary to create. Like I'm as much as I would love to create something from a seed of an idea. I'm not that person. I'm not a writer. I'm just not. But I can help people. Kind
Like a
of.
creative producer, you could end up in that
Yeah,
sort of a
yeah,
role. But let me
yeah,
ask you this question. If you kind of look at all that, because it's not so much about the vehicle, it's more about the vision.
yeah.
What's the experience of life that you want? Like, what's the quality? If you had to look at it spatially, so it's not so concrete about what you'd be doing, it's more about like the experience, the space of being. I don't want to get too woo woo. It's not really my
Well, I
thing,
mean,
but
just satisfied with the feeling that I'm taking a chance.
so there's something there about satisfaction. There's something also about creation I can definitely hear, because that's what I call being unmessable with, is being in creation mode. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing. You're sort of, you could be failing, but it's exciting, it's exhilarating, it's a lot
Right,
enlivening,
right.
it, even if you're failing, it's
Yes,
like alive, right?
yes.
So something about like creativity, satisfaction might be the outcome of it, but the space is, it's like risk. Is it risk, or is it like, I don't know. What
It's
would be
like just using my brain. You know what I mean? Just knowing every day that I've applied I've applied myself, and
yeah,
I do that as a mom day in and day out.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because
And
there's really no playbook, no matter how many books they write. It's
it's
just kind of like,
crazy. There's no job harder because you're just like, am I totally messing this up? And of course, you're not. But it's
they'll tell you you did, though,
yeah,
at some point. They'll tell you how much you messed them up, and then they'll come out the other end and say, "Thank you so
yeah,
much." And yeah,
exactly.
it kind of goes that way.
Yeah. I remember my dad sitting me down when I was 14 and he was like, listen, he goes, I'm going to be the dumbest person you know for about 4 years and then you're going to like me a lot again. And I go, okay, dad. Yeah, sure. I roll.
Yeah,
And of course, that's
exactly.
exactly how it happened.
It is pretty funny. But if you think
Yeah.
about that, it's sort of like being stimulated, being alive. So there's
Stimulated
like,
is
yeah,
a great word.
stimulated, vibrant, alive, creative. So that's sort of what I would call a vision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you, and you're not stuck with those words, but let's say you
Yeah.
have, stimulation, creativity, satisfaction, aliveness, however you kind of create those pillars. That's what I'd use to determine and discern what I engaged with.
Yeah.
So if somebody offers you a play and it pays nothing, but it's stimulating and it's an freaking do it.
Right.
Like, because it satisfies what you really want. What you
Right.
really want is that space of life.
Right. And
And the vehicle will be whatever.
right, because no matter what, that carries over to my kids more than anything I could possibly do. Like seeing their mom, seeing their dad go for what they believe in, like what they believe they can do. I think is the best thing that my kids could see. I mean, I can sign them up for every soccer, every piano, yeah, I can sign them up for every single thing. But if they see their mom like her wheels are turning at home and she's wanting something else, then it washes all the that. So I
And it's
think
the
that's
same
a
thing with your
wonderful place.
marriage.
Yes, exactly. So I think
You
that's a
know,
wonderful place to work from. The word stimulation I'm really grabbing on
yeah,
to.
I could tell you like that one, but that's what I heard when you were like that. I used my brain. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like that kind of, because things get dead. And even if you love your job and you love what you do, things get like you're just going through life. It's another day and it's, another week and until the summer or whatever. And
Right.
that happens in all areas of life. And as you say with your children, for them to see and be enveloped in an environment of stimulation and creativity and, in all the different areas, including your family and your relationship with your husband and all of that, that is going to impact them far more than you being able to work and provide a paycheck to have them go do whatever they want to do.
Right. Right.
It really
So
is a
how do I position myself to do that?
Well, I think you can
Mhm.
position yourself by having that be real for you. Number one, sharing that with Bo, with your husband,
Mhm.
and
Mm.
with your kids, and say, "This is what I'm envisioning our life to be full of." You
Right.
can say it in young language. I mean, obviously, oldie's a little young for that, but but your other kid, your 5 and 8 year old, can get that, right? So
Yeah.
if you start to speak from that place and share that, like Mike and I started creating, my husband Mike and I started creating this whole thing about freedom, that was going to be the theme for us for the next couple of years and creating that. So I could cry now. We
I
have
know.
said no to things and we have said yes to things based on that vision. So as you construct the vision and start sharing it, things will become so obvious to
Well,
you.
I know because watching you and Mike do it, I'm just like, wait, what? Wait. So you just have this apartment in Paris, like
I'm sitting in it right
you
now.
and you just downsize so you could do it, and you're like, yeah, yeah, that's
That's
what we're
right.
doing.
And
And
we're
Mike is leaving. So okay, wait. So and his job is okay with yeah, they're fine because
and
that's how
if they
that's
weren't,
right,
he would have been okay with it, just like you getting
right,
on that plane. And
right,
that's the
right,
thing. You got on the plane saying, and if they don't call me back, I'll go see my friends. And
right.
we had to be committed and unattached with the result. And that's what I heard in your LA
Yeah,
story too.
yeah, yeah. I know because from the outside and it looks amazing and incredible what you guys have done. You know what I mean? But it's because I'm sure you sat down and had this conversation and said, listen, are
What are
we
we
going to
creating?
keep doing? Are we going to keep doing? Is that what we're going to keep doing? Are you, and happy? Yeah, sure. We're happy. We're content,
Things are fine.
things are fine.
And that's the thing. You got to be, and in marriage, we've been together 30 years
Wow.
and we have had times where it was fine.
Right.
And I'll tell you, that is the worst four-letter word you could get into in your life. And
Yeah.
this is for anything in your life, whether it's in your job or your marriage or your body or
Right.
anything. It's like when things are fine, you better sound the alarm bell.
I
You
so
know,
subscribe to that.
it's like, wait a minute, then that means I'm no longer creating and I'm just along for the ride and I'm
Right.
going through life and it's fine.
It's fine.
It is. There's nothing wrong. But creation isn't from something wrong. It's from nothing and your vision and your word. And what are you creating? So if you're creating that kind of stimulation and vibrancy and creativity, then you want to be true to that. So if I
Right.
were coaching you, I would say, great. So now what are some actions that you could take on a daily basis that will manifest or presence stimulation, vibrancy, creation? Because unless you build that muscle, what's
Right.
going to take over is the reaction mode
Yeah.
and the
a-
good, bad, and ugly reaction. Even the good reactions are still automatic. There's no creation needed.
Absolutely. So I know those steps are different for everybody.
Hmm.
I have known for, like since I stopped working on a daily basis on Law and Order, I'm like, okay, I need to get up and write. I need to get up and write just three
Perfect.
pages. You know what I mean? Have I done that? Mm-mm, I
Well,
haven't.
this is where people are messable with. They have a
Right.
vision. They even know what they need to do, and then
Right.
they don't do it.
Right. Why? Why don't they do it?
Well, let's look. What's messing with you
Making
and
lunches.
your I bet you that's not it because you're not making lunches 12 hours a day. Okay. Here's
Yeah.
what I would say. I would just tell you, you're just not scheduling it. So
Yeah.
if you have it in your calendar, and I live by my calendar, I mean, I have
Yeah.
showering in my
You told me
calendar.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have in your calendar 8 to 9 in the morning writing or whatever, and you honor your word, this is integrity. So this is perfect for you.
Right.
You love that
Right.
word. Part of integrity is honoring your word. So if you create it in your head, but not in your calendar, it's like let's do lunch someday.
Right.
But if
Right.
you create it like, I'm going to write every day for an hour, that's it, or a half an hour, or whatever, just start with 15 minutes. But,
Right.
you put it there and you build the muscle, you build the habit, you become disciplined, just like you do with exercise or playing the
Right.
guitar or whatever, until you design it. Life is not going to have you do it by default.
Right.
You're going to be reacting to life,
Right.
making lunches, dealing with the kids, blah, blah, blah. That's reaction mode.
Right. I totally, yes. Yeah. It's helpful. It's helpful to, to revisit that, to revisit a part of, like a part of yourself that you've tapped into before. It's still there. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And I think remembering words like integrity and stimulation, like having those kind of like I think you said columns,
Yeah,
uh,
like pillars. Yeah.
pillars. Yeah. Like I think that's a great visualization, like right now as I'm trying to kind of build the next
Yeah.
thing. Because it's and also like as a woman in her 40s, you're like, I'm done, put me out of pasture. I mean, like you have all these negative things and you're just like, get out of here. Like
Exactly. They
what
don't belong
is
in those
what
pillars, but that's the point. If you have those pillars, they're almost like protective pillars
right,
because they also have you say no to certain things
right.
that aren't consistent with what you're saying. Just like you said no to that number way back when. So it's like if you can create the pillars and then you can create promises. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm hearing a whole newsletter out of this, pillars and promises. Okay. So promises are really, really powerful. And in fact, I've written 2 books about promising because when you promise something, it's like you're creating something into existence that didn't exist. If
Right,
I promise I'll have lunch with you on Friday, all of a sudden there's a future that was not going to happen anyway. And the second before I made that promise, it wasn't going to happen. So
right.
I just created a new future. So for you, if you promised, I'm just using the writing as an example. I think there's
Sure.
probably 5 other actions a day you could take, and I would recommend doing 5 actions a day towards this vision, because if you don't start populating your life with actions that fulfill on stimulation and vibe and all that stuff, it's not going to be there by default. It just won't.
Right,
You have to
right,
design it. So promising is a powerful tool because when you promise to write for an hour or you promise to play guitar for a half an hour, and you could do that with your kids, and
right.
whatever it is, you're now creating your future. You're the author of the
Yeah,
future, not the reactor that's really good at reacting, because all effective
absolutely.
people are. But that's a different mode, just like you said, like when all of a sudden everything isn't how you expected it and you have to pivot. That's exciting and exhilarating. When you are creating the future, you're the master of your own universe.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
I'd come up with
exciting.
5 promises that you would do a day. And it could
Okay.
include,
I'll come
dancing
back
with
to
the
you.
kids for 15 minutes. Yeah, exactly. Text me and let me know what you came up with.
I
But
will.
put it in your calendar, because I think you need, especially not having to wake up and go to work every day right now,
Yeah,
you have to create the structure.
right. And I know, and it's I gave birth 10 months ago, and ever since then, like my health, especially because I'm an older mom too, and you have that thought like I want to be young and healthy, and I'm going to have a 10-year-old at whatever age, and but also like when I get to go run, or when I get to, and
Yeah.
I do it every, there's a singular focus, and I'm just thinking about doing the next hard thing, like putting one foot in front of the other. And that's so freeing
It's
to not
meditative.
have
It's
like
amazing.
mom, yeah, to not have the mom brain where you're just like, did I sign him up for that? Did I remember to call that person back, and the play date and this and that? And do they have the yellow shirt for Friday? Oh God, the popsicles are going to be so disappointed. You know what I mean? All of that stuff goes away
Yeah.
for an hour and a half, and all I can, it's just a singular focus. So I think if I, now, like that's what I've been managing to do day to day, and I
Which
think now
is
I'm
amazing, but that's what you want to now translate to those
right
other areas.
now I can manage some more time to do something else that's now working on a different part. So I'm ready physically, I'm ready, emotionally, and like, just go promising to myself to say as much dedication as you do to being a great mom, being a good enough mom, as is said. But as much dedication as you put into that, as much into your health, now you know that there's a, a time a
Well,
day you need.
health is not just your body. I mean,
Right,
that's really where I would look at it from. I would look at it from that creativity, the expression of your creativity while you do it as a mother, I'm sure, and as a wife.
right.
It's different when you're only focused on that one thing, like you said. That kind of being in the zone
Yeah,
is creatable, and you've created it in your athletics. So now the question is, how do you create that in those other areas of being
right.
stimulated and creative, and all the things that you said that were your pillars. I mean,
Yeah,
and you have so many things that you can express yourself with. Not everybody plays an instrument, not everybody can write, not everybody, but you can.
right, right. Yeah, that's it. It's, I mean, it's exciting to to have a direction and say, oh, it's something as easy as making a promise to yourself to do that every day and see
Yeah.
where that gets, because that's what I've always subscribed to. Work begets work.
Exactly.
So-
And actions produce results. If you don't take actions, you're not going to have results. So just thinking about writing isn't going to produce pages, as
right,
we all know.
right.
I think about exercising all the time. It doesn't quite work. So, so the actions, and then what you'll discover, and this is what people discover when they make a promise, is what messes with your word, because there's going to be times you keep it and then times you don't keep the promise, and the opportunity when you don't keep the promise to say, okay, what became more important than my word,
Absolutely. That's an opportunity to look and examine. I
and
totally get that.
dismantle that and then
Totally
take
get
that out
that.
of the way. And that's the whole
Because that's
unmessable with
happening,
methodology.
right. That's happening on a bigger scale,
Always.
that's really cool, Jocelyn. That's
Yeah.
a really cool thing to think about.
You keep me posted and let me know
I
what you bump
will.
up against and what you accomplish, because that's the thrilling part. You can't lose. You're either going to produce miraculous results, or you're going to see what messes with you in every area of your life. It just
Yeah,
happens to be isolated to this.
right. But it's always interesting speaking with you, because I think we've talked maybe like 5 times, and every
Yeah.
single time, within 2 minutes, we are having a serious conversation, and I'm telling you things that I've only just been thinking about, and that's I really commend you for like bringing that part out of. I know you're successful at coaching, and you're like I. That's one reason I love speaking with you. It's like let's get into it, and you're just one of those people that you're just like, oh, I'm going to leave this conversation being inspired.
That's my job. But
Yeah,
I appreciate you
really,
saying that, because it's
yeah.
definitely deliberate. I listen for who people are, and I speak to who they are so they can rise to the occasion and not be stopped by anything that's happening in the way. That's my mission,
Wow.
in life. So I appreciate you saying that for sure. And I
These,
appreciate our friendship. No, even though it's
yeah.
only been like a few times that we've spoken, I feel like, I could call you for anything and you could
Oh,
call me for anything. And it's
totally,
just, yeah,
totally. Yeah, I
yeah.
appreciate you, and this has really been great. I'm gonna text you and follow up with you about this.
Good, because I want to make sure that you stay true to your
I
word.
know,
Kick your ass a little bit. No, no, no. But
which
for
I'm
those of
trying
you
to.
listening, yeah, really, for those of you listening or watching, depending on where you get your podcast, if you got inspired by something, if you learned something, share this episode with somebody that you think would be inspired or learn something. Especially share it with any of your struggling actor friends to
Mhm.
see that, you've just got to hang in there and have no other option. Otherwise, you do have another option, and that's how that one will go. And please rate and review the episode below, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for being here, Kelli.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Be Unmessable with the podcast. I never take for granted that you've chosen to spend some time with me, and I am committed that you get value every time you do. So if you want to develop your unmessable with muscle to create life versus react to it, click below in the show notes, and we will get you into our free promise game process that will enable you to start creating what you want versus waiting for what you want. I look forward to hearing back from you on what you're creating, as well as future topics for the show that might support you in being unmessable with. See you next time.